The champagne glass shattered against marble, with a sound that silenced the entire ballroom. Ethan Hunt stood frozen at the base of the grand staircase, his tuxedo impeccable, his expression unreadable, and his hand still extended from where he'd let the glass slip. Around him, 500 of the world's most powerful people had turned to stare, but he saw none of them. His eyes were locked on the woman descending the stairs, draped in midnight blue silk, her chin raised high, her gaze cutting through him like a blade he'd been waiting a decade to feel. Zara Akoy had walked back into his life, and the world he'd built with blood and sleepless nights suddenly felt like paper. A waiter rushed forward with a towel. Ethan barely noticed. His security team shifted closer, confused by their boss's sudden paralysis. But he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 10 years of careful control, of buried emotion, of forcing himself to forget her face each morning, evaporated in an instant. She was here. She was real. And she was looking at him like he was a stranger she'd once known in another lifetime. Someone coughed. The orchestra stumbled back into a waltz. Conversations resumed in hushed, curious tones. Ethan Hunt never broke composure. This would be tomorrow's gossip, whispered over business lunches and charity brunches. The billionaire who dropped his drink like a clumsy schoolboy. He didn't care. Zara reached the bottom of the stairs and turned deliberately away from him, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. Her movements were fluid, confident, entirely unbothered. She'd grown into the woman he'd always known she would become, stronger, more beautiful, utterly out of his reach. Ethan's chest tightened. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. But then again, nothing about them had ever gone according to plan. 11 years earlier, Ethan had been nobody, a scholarship student with holes in his shoes and a mind that worked 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the lecture hall. He'd survived on instant noodles, library computers, and the stubborn belief that intelligence could buy him out of poverty. He had no connections, no family money, nothing but raw ambition and the chip on his shoulder that came from being underestimated his entire life. Zara had noticed him first. She'd slid into the seat beside him during economic theory, uninvited, and said, "You're wrong about the elasticity argument, but your instinct was good. Want to study together?" He'd looked up, startled. She was already halfway through organizing her notes, her natural hair pulled back, her eyes sharp and interested. Not in him as a man, in him as a mind worth engaging. It was the first time anyone had looked at him that way. "I'm not wrong," he'd said. She'd smiled, "Prove it." They'd spent the next 6 hours in the library, debating theories, dissecting models, challenging each other until the security guard kicked them out at closing. Ethan had walked home that night with something unfamiliar warming his chest. Not attraction, not yet. Something better. Recognition. She'd seen him. After that, they were inseparable. They studied in coffee shops with sticky tables and bad lighting. They shared meals that consisted of whatever was cheapest. They sat on the steps outside her apartment building late at night, when the city finally quieted, and talked about futures that seemed impossible. Ethan wanted to build something that mattered. Zara wanted to change systems from the inside. They dreamed aloud, unafraid of sounding naive, because they had each other to believe in. "You're going to be insufferable when you're successful," Zara had teased one night, her head resting on his shoulder. "You'll keep me honest," Ethan had replied, kissing the top of her head. "Promise. Promise." He'd meant it, every word. 6 months into their relationship, Ethan had asked her to marry him, not with a ring or a plan, just a quiet question spoken into the dark of his tiny apartment. "When we make it out of here, will you marry me?" Zara had turned to face him, her eyes shining. "Yes, but only if we build it together, all of it, no secrets." "No secrets," he'd agreed. That promise had lasted exactly 14 months. The phone calls had started subtly, unknown numbers that Ethan let go to voicemail, then texts, then emails. Then a man in an expensive suit waiting outside his apartment one morning with an envelope and a cold smile. Ethan had tried to wave him off, tried to ignore the summons, but his father's people were persistent, and when persistence failed, they became threatening. Richard Hunt was not a man accustomed to being ignored, especially not by the son he'd abandoned 18 years prior. The boardroom had smelled like leather and old money. Ethan had sat across from his father for the first time since childhood, surrounded by lawyers and executives who looked at him like a problem to be managed. Richard hadn't bothered with pleasantries. "You've done well for yourself," his father had said, flipping through a folder. "Impressive given your circumstances. I'm prepared to offer you an opportunity." "I don't want anything from you," Ethan had replied. "I'm aware, but you'll take it anyway." Richard had slid a contract across the table. "I'm building an empire. I need someone intelligent, hungry, and blood. You qualify. In exchange, I'll fund your education, clear your debts, and open doors that would otherwise remain closed for someone of your background." Ethan had stared at the contract without touching it. And the catch? "You end the relationship with Zara Akoy immediately. No contact, no explanations, 10 years of silence." The room had tilted. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious about business. She's a distraction. Worse, she's a liability. My competitors would use her to get to you to get to me. And frankly, she doesn't fit the image we're building. You'll understand when you're older." Ethan had stood so fast his chair fell backward. "Go to hell." Richard hadn't flinched. "Sit down, Ethan. You're not hearing me. This isn't a request. If you refuse, I'll make sure Zara's graduate funding disappears. Her job offers will vanish. Every door she's worked to open will close. Not because she did anything wrong, but because I can. I have that power. You know I do." Ethan had felt his blood turn to ice. "You'd ruin an innocent woman's life out of spite." "I protect my investment. You're my son whether you like it or not, and I don't share. 10 years, Ethan. Give me 10 years of loyalty, and after that, you're free. Do whatever you want. But until then, she doesn't exist." Ethan had tried everything. He'd consulted lawyers who told him his father was untouchable. He'd looked for loopholes that didn't exist. He'd considered running, but where could they go that his father's reach wouldn't follow? Richard Hunt controlled banks, politicians, media empires. He could dismantle Zara's entire future with 3 phone calls. The night Ethan signed the contract, his hands had shaken so badly he'd barely managed the signature. He'd had 1 week to disappear. He tried to find words, tried to write letters he immediately destroyed. How could he explain that he was choosing to break her heart to save her life? That leaving was the only way to protect her from becoming collateral damage in his father's world. She would never believe it. She'd think he was lying, making excuses, choosing ambition over love. So he'd chosen silence instead. The last night, he'd stood outside her apartment building for hours, memorizing the light in her window, the shape of her shadow moving behind the curtains. She'd called him 17 times. He'd listened to every voicemail, his throat tight, tears he couldn't afford to shed burning behind his eyes. Then he turned off his phone and walked away. Zara had waited for 3 days before panic set in. Ethan had never gone silent before. They talked every day, sometimes multiple times. She'd gone to his apartment and found it empty, stripped bare except for a single envelope on the kitchen counter with her name written in his handwriting. Inside was a check for $10,000 and no note. She'd torn the check into pieces and spent the next week calling everyone they knew, checking hospitals, police stations, trying to understand what had happened. No one had answers. He'd simply vanished, like he'd never existed at all. The anger had come first, hot and consuming and easier than grief. She'd convinced herself he was a coward, a liar, a man who'd used her for comfort and abandoned her when something better came along. She'd burned the photos, deleted the messages, forced herself to stop saying his name. But late at night, alone in her apartment, the questions haunted her. Had she missed something? Had she been too much or not enough? Had he ever loved her at all, or had it all been a beautiful lie? The self-doubt was worse than the anger. Slowly, painfully, she'd rebuilt. She'd thrown herself into her work with a ferocity that scared her colleagues. She'd climbed every ladder, seized every opportunity, built a career that impressed even her harshest critics. She'd dated occasionally, but never seriously. Love was a door she'd locked and thrown away the key. She didn't need it. She was fine without it. She'd almost convinced herself it was true. Meanwhile, Ethan had disappeared into his father's world and discovered he had a talent for ruthlessness. He'd learned to negotiate without mercy, to see opportunities where others saw obstacles, to make decisions that cost jobs and destroyed competitors. His father had been right about one thing: Ethan was exceptional. Within 3 years, he doubled his father's portfolio. Within 5, he'd taken over completely. Richard Hunt had died of a heart attack 6 years into the contract, leaving Ethan sole heir to an empire worth billions. Ethan hadn't cried at the funeral. But the contract remained. 4 more years of silence. 4 more years of checking Zara's social media from anonymous accounts, seeing her smile in photos with friends, watching her succeed and grow and live a life that didn't include him. He'd kept everything. Every photo he'd saved before destroying his phone. Every small memento. A bracelet she'd left in his apartment. A book she'd given him with notes in the margins. He'd built an empire, but he'd never stopped being hers. Women had tried. Beautiful, intelligent, powerful women who saw him as the ultimate prize. He'd gone on exactly 3 dates in 10 years, and each one had ended early because none of them were her. His assistant had eventually stopped trying to set him up. His friends joked that he was married to his work. They had no idea how close to the truth they were. The contract had expired 3 months ago. Ethan had stared at the calendar date for hours, feeling something crack open in his chest. He was free. He could call her, find her, explain everything. But 10 years was a lifetime. She'd moved on, built a life without him. What right did he have to walk back in and disrupt her peace with his truth? So he'd waited, watched, tried to find the courage. And then he'd sent the gala invitation. It had been a coward's move, he knew. Anonymous, indirect, leaving the choice to her. But he'd needed to see her, just once. Just to know if there was anything left of what they'd been, or if time had truly erased him from her heart. Now she stood across the ballroom, laughing at something a colleague said, and Ethan felt like he was drowning. He made himself move, 1 foot in front of the other, through the crowd, past curious glances and whispered speculation. He didn't care about any of it. She was the only person in the room who mattered. Zara sensed him before she saw him. Her spine straightened, her smile fading, her body turning with the slow precision of someone preparing for battle. When their eyes met again, this time at close range, Ethan felt the full weight of her fury. "Zara," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "Mr. Hunt," she replied, ice-coating every syllable. What an unexpected honor. The formal address was a knife between his ribs. "Can we talk privately? I don't think we have anything to discuss." "Please." He hated how desperate he sounded, but pride was a luxury he'd given up the moment she walked into the room. 5 minutes. She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, with deliberate slowness, she set down her champagne glass. "Lead the way." He guided her to a private terrace overlooking the city, the sounds of the gala fading behind them. The night air was cold, but neither of them acknowledged it. They stood several feet apart, the distance between them feeling infinite. "You have 5 minutes," Zara said, crossing her arms. "Speak." Ethan had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Every variation, every explanation, every apology. But now, faced with her, all the words felt inadequate. "I didn't leave because I wanted to," he began. "Is that supposed to make it better?" "No, nothing makes it better, but you deserve the truth." He pulled out his phone, navigating to a secure folder. My father found me, threatened me, gave me a choice. Disappear from your life for 10 years or watch him destroy everything you'd worked for. Your funding, your career, everything. He handed her the phone. On the screen was a scanned copy of the contract, the terms laid out in brutal legal language. Zara read it silently, her face betraying nothing. He said you were a liability, Ethan continued. That his enemies would use you to get to me, that you didn't fit his world. I tried to fight it, spent weeks looking for a way out, but he had too much power, too many connections. So I signed, and I spent 10 years building everything he wanted so that when the contract expired, I'd have enough power to protect you if I ever got the chance to come back. Zara looked up from the phone, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You made that choice for me. I did. Without asking, without explaining, you just disappeared and let me think I meant nothing to you. I know. Do you? Her voice cracked. Do you have any idea what those first few months were like? I thought I was losing my mind. I questioned everything about myself, about us. I convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing, that I'd been a fool for believing you loved me. I did love you, Ethan said fiercely. I never stopped. Then you should have told me. We could have run. We could have fought together. Instead, you decided you knew what was best and broke my heart to save my career. You don't get to play hero in this story, Ethan. You left me with nothing, not even the truth. You're right. He stepped closer, his hands hanging helplessly at his sides. You're absolutely right. I was a coward. I told myself I was protecting you, but really I was just taking the easy way out. Because explaining would have meant watching you hate me to my face, and I couldn't bear it. So I left you in the dark, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Zara wiped at her eyes angrily, refusing to let the tears fall. You waited 10 years. Every single day. You tracked my life from a distance like some kind of ghost. Yes. And you expected me to what? Be grateful. Fall into your arms because you finally decided I was worth explaining yourself to. No, Ethan said quietly. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know the truth. That it wasn't because I didn't love you. That every moment we had was real. That you were the only good thing in my life, and losing you destroyed me in ways I'll never recover from. The silence stretched between them, heavy with a decade of unspoken words. Finally, Zara spoke. I don't know if I can forgive you. I know. I don't know if I even want to try. I understand. But I need time to process this, to decide what I want. Because right now, I'm angry and hurt and confused, and I can't think clearly when you're standing here looking at me like I'm the only thing that matters. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. Take all the time you need. Zara turned to leave, then paused at the terrace door. Without looking back, she said, if we try this again, it doesn't start with grand gestures or declarations. It starts slow, with honesty, and on my terms. Hope, fragile and dangerous, bloomed in Ethan's chest. Anything. I mean it. No more decisions made for me. No more silence. If you lie to me, even once, we're done forever. I won't, he promised. Never again. She finally looked back at him, her expression still guarded but softer. You waited 10 years. I suppose you can wait a little longer. Then she disappeared back into the gala, leaving Ethan alone on the terrace with the city lights below, and the first genuine smile he'd worn in a decade. He'd waited 10 years. He could wait a lifetime if that's what she needed. Because some loves were worth the wait. Some loves survived disappearances and broken promises and a decade of silence. Some loves were patient enough to start over, even when starting over meant admitting every mistake and earning back trust one careful day at a time. Ethan Hunt had built an empire. But tonight, he'd begun the far more difficult work of rebuilding a heart. If you found yourself holding your breath, wanting to know if they'd make it, hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me whose side you're on, Ethan's or Zara's. And subscribe because stories like this, Stories about love that refuses to die no matter how hard the world tries to kill it are what we're all about here. Thanks for watching.